thing, we do have a winner for the riddle poems. Katie's poem got the most votes, so congratulations. You will get 2 extra points. So yes, yeah, everybody can clap for her. Clap. Yes, this is a good thing, right? We celebrate this. So I need votes on the sonnet poems by Thursday night, right? So by Thursday at midnight. A couple of you have already voted. So good, thank you for that. Keep it up. Right, to vote, remember, you just email me your vote. All right, so how many of you have started on the metaphysical poem? Okay, a couple of you are trying. Okay, how's it going? Not good? Okay, why not? What's going pear-shaped for you? What's the thing that's holding? What's the thing that's hardest about this? Okay, so finding a topic.
I guess I don't really understand.
Okay. And yeah, Gianna, did you have something to add, or?
Yeah, I can find a topic. It's just hard to kind of put it in this format about how I want to talk about it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a weird and sort of culturally specific, period-specific format, right? Now, the reason I want you doing this, the reason I give you the poetry assignment before we actually talk about the kind of poem that I'm asking you to write, is that I'm kind of hoping that trying to do this before we really discuss it will have you, you'll one, it'll help you understand like how much difficult craft goes into writing a poem. Secondly, I've noticed that a lot of you that are looking up some of these things, the terms I use in the assignment sheets for yourselves before coming to class, so it means you often have a little bit more to talk about when you get here. Now, the big thing about metaphysical poetry, right, is the idea of the metaphysical conceit. Now, those of you who have already started on this poem, did you look this up? Did you get any sense of what this is, what a metaphysical conceit is?
It's like describing something abstract with something concrete.
Yeah, you're often trying to describe some kind of abstract idea in terms of something concrete, right? So it's a species of what kind of figure of speech? If you're describing something in terms of something else.
Metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. It's a kind of metaphor. Good. But a metaphysical conceit is usually a really kind of striking or weird metaphor, right? It's pointing out similarities between two things that you would not expect to find. Now, this kind of poetry sort of reached its height in England in the 17th century. And it's often, but not always, religious. And it is usually rhetorical. Now, what do I mean by rhetorical? If you're practicing rhetoric on someone, what are you doing? Yeah, you're trying to persuade them. Yeah, you're using your arts to try to persuade them. So usually, the sort of situation we'll have in a metaphysical poem is a speaker who's trying to convince a listener of something else. Not always, but this is the typical setup, right? So if we look, let's look briefly at page 504, the John Donne poem, The Flea. Now I get that this is a difficult poem in part just because the language is a little bit remote for us, right? It's very much in a 17th century idiom, and we don't use a lot of these words these ways anymore. And it's also very dependent on certain 17th century ways of thinking. But I think we can probably pick apart here what the central metaphor is here. What is the metaphysical conceit in this poem? What's being compared to what?
A flea in marriage.
Is it marriage the flea is being compared to?
The bun.
Pardon?
The bun.
I'm sorry, I didn't...
The bun, like the relationship.
It's talking about a kind of bond, yes.
Sex.
Exactly, yes. It's not, it's actually kind of outside a marriage relationship, right? So yeah, it's comparing the flea to sex, right? Now, a metaphor typically has two parts, right? The part that's the subject of the metaphor, right? The thing that we are comparing to something, the main thing we're talking about, we call the tenor. And the comparative term we call the vehicle. So the thing we're comparing, the thing that we're really talking about, is the tenor. The thing we're comparing it to is the vehicle. So in this poem, which is the tenor and which is the vehicle? What's the real subject of the poem? What are we really talking about? Yeah, good. This is the tenor. Which means the vehicle is the flea, right? The vehicle is just, the flea is just something that we're using as a convenient means of explaining our tenor. And in what way is the flea like sex? What is the poet's basis for the comparison here? Yeah, Matthew.
How the couple's two bloods are intermingled together?
Yeah, he's talking about the intermingling of fluids, basically, right? The flea bit me, it bit you. Both of our bloods mingle within it, right? So we've already got a close physical bond, right? Now, some of this is dependent on faulty 17th century ideas of biology, right? People believed that a child was conceived by mingling the parents' bloods in the womb. That was what happened. Right? We know that it's not. Things don't work that way. But we're talking about people who had not yet discovered microbiology, right? So this was how they thought things worked. So let's look at the way the speaker is trying to tease this comparison out, right? Can I get somebody to read the first stanza on page 504? Volunteer. Anybody? Any volunteer? All right, Gianna, go for it.
Mark but this flea, and mark in this, how little that which thou deniest me is. It sucked me first, and thou suckst me. And in this flea our two bloods mingle be. Thou knowest that this cannot be said, a sin nor shame, nor loss of maiden. Yet this enjoys before it blew, and pamper swells with one blood made two. And this, alas, is more than we would do.
Okay, so what is the speaker doing in this stanza? What does he mean? Why does he say mark this flea?
Notice it, take notice.
Yes, pay attention. I am going to discourse on this flea. Right? It was a common preacher's rhetorical trick, right? When they were, beginning a parable or teaching a lesson, right?
He's trying to say if our blood's inside this flea, why can't we just go ahead and,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what he's trying to say, right? Essentially, the act has already occurred within the flea, right?
according to like social standards, it's already been broken, so might as well just do it.
Yeah, and you can't. Thou knowest that this cannot be said a sin nor shame or a loss of maidenhead, right? You suffered no loss of reputation from this. This did not stain your virginity or any of that sort of thing, right? Now, why else is he choosing a flea as the comparative term here? What else is he drawing attention to about the flea? Mark but this flea, and mark in this how little that which thou deniest me is. What's another important characteristic of a flea he's pointing to?
What's small?
Yeah, it's just a tiny little inconsequential thing, right? You barely notice it.
So is he comparing like them having sex to like the size of a flea? Like it's not.
Yeah,
It's not a big thing, not a big deal.
Yeah, it's that important, right? It should bother you that much. Right? The flea is a tiny little thing. Nothing to worry about. And we're talking, 1633, right? Everybody had fleas. Right? Fleas were everywhere. Does anybody know why people used to wear powdered wigs? Yeah, lice, to kill lice. Most people, like men and women, basically shaved their heads, cropped their hair real close, and wore elaborate powdered wigs to avoid lice. So just, fun fact. Yep. Do with that what you will. Oh, stay, 3 lives and 1 flea spare, where we almost, yea, more than married are. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. Though parents grudge, and you we're met, and cloistered in these living walls of jet. Though use make you apt to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege, 3 sins in killing 3. Okay, so first, let's focus on these first 2 lines. Oh, stay, 3 lives and 1 flea spare, where we almost, yea, more than married are. So what does this suggest the woman listening to him is about to do? Oh, stay, 3 lives and 1 flea spare. What's he telling her to do or not to do? Three lives and 1 flea spare. What's that?
Is she pregnant? That's what I thought.
Well, that's 3 lives and 1 flea spare. Yeah, I mean that's the if our bloods mingle within the flea, that means it's making our baby, right? What else? What is she like? Why would he tell her to spare the 3 lives within the flea? What's she about to do? Yeah, she's going to kill the flea. He's like, no, don't do that, right? Stop. Do not kill the flea, or our bloods mingle. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. So is he developing the metaphor here a bit? So is the flea still just a tiny little inconsequential thing that just takes blood from both people? Now, what's he turning it into? What's becoming of this metaphor? So it was just a little thing in the first stanza. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. Though parents grudge and you we're met, and cloistered in these living walls of jet. No, it's not just a small thing. Yeah, he's building it out into it's representing a larger structure, right? A physical structure or a social structure?
He's turning it into the sanctity of marriage.
Yeah, the flea here, so, well, now we've already consummated the marriage, right? So now, what's going on within the flea, right, that is our bond, our sacred holy bond. Right, cloistered in these living walls of jet. Though use make you apt to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege, 3 sins in killing 3. So what happens, what is he saying happens if she kills the flea?
She's not just going to be a princess.
Yes. You crush the flea with your nail, and you kill me, you kill yourself, and you kill our unborn child within the flea. Right? How a fully developed human fetus would grow within a flea, I don't know, right? You know, that's a bit beyond me, but anywho, all right, doing great. So can we get somebody to read the last stanza here? Volunteer. Annie, volunteer.
Cruel and sudden,
All right, thank you.
hast thou since purple thy nail in blood of innocence. Wherein could this flea guilty be, expected in that drop which it sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst
Mm-hmm.
and stayest that thou
Mm-hmm.
findest not thyself, nor me the weaker now. 'Tis true, then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor when thou yieldest to me will waste as this flea's death took life from thee.
Okay, thank you. So what has she gone and done now? Yep, she has purpled her nail in blood of innocence, right? She went ahead and squished it. And now the blood that was in the flea is all over her hand. Well, what'd you go and do that for? Right? Cruel and sudden hast thou since purpled thy nail in blood of innocence. Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that dropped and sucked from thee? And then, what does he turn around and point out to her? Yet thou triumphst, and sayest that thou findst not thyself nor me the weaker now. What was he telling her in the last stanza would happen if she crushed the flea?
She would die.
So, no, you kill all 3 of us. Wait, stop. Right? And what is she then pointing out to him after she's crushed the flea? Yeah. Does she feel any different? Yep, thou triumphst and sayest that thou findst not thyself nor me the weaker now, right? Okay, nothing happened to me, nothing happened to you. Right? Everything you said was going to happen when I crushed the flea didn't happen. So then the reversal, right? 'Tis true, then learn how false fears be. Just so much honor when thou yieldst to me will waste, as this flea's death took life from thee. So why was he telling her to spare the flea? What was his initial argument about the flea?
He wanted to have sex.
Yeah. And because this flea had taken from both of them, right? It's like, metaphorically, it's already happened. So why are you holding back? Then he says, when she goes to crush the flea, if you crush that flea where our sacred bond is forming, you'll kill us both. And now how is his argument changed in response to circumstances? What's he back to?
It's like, look, you didn't listen to me, and you're still fine, so...
Yeah. See how little and inconsequential this really is? Yeah. Yeah, see? Nothing's going to happen. Everything's going to be fine. So he's trying to turn it back to his own advantage again, right? He's back to arguing just how tiny and little and inconsequential the flea was, right? It's gone from being our marriage bed and marriage temple to just being this inconsequential little flea again.
When he says, learn how false fears be,
Uh-huh.
he's referring to her initial, like, not wanting to have sex, and then
Yes.
he's also referring to when he told her about Flea.
Yep. It's taking us all the way back to the last stanza, right? Now there's something going on in the rhyme scheme here as well, right? It's not just the flea itself that's metaphorical, right? The rhyme scheme here reflects very closely the content of the poem. What do we notice about? I just want you to try to map out the rhymes in the first stanza. So just take a minute, go through, map out the rhymes in the first stanza. And then once you finish, just tell me what you got. This is the be said head. How's that work? Yep. A, B, B. What about said head? CC. And then what do we have? D, D, D. Yep. Now, when we have two lines that rhyme right next to each other like this pair of rhymed lines where one succeeds the other immediately, what do we call those? Yeah, good. These are all couplets. And indeed, what is the poem about? Coupling, yes. So, it's appropriate that the form is couplets for most of it, right? It reflects what he's talking about. And then we have this triplet at the end of each stanza. So what does the triplet reflect? Yeah, that's right. You and me and the flea makes three, right? So yeah, so here we have the speaker and the listener in the first 6 lines, and the final 3 lines reflect speaker plus listener plus flea. Or flea baby, or however you want to frame it, right? So this is a really good example of using the form to reflect the content of the poem, right? Now, there are some poets who do this in much more concrete kinds of ways. So if you turn briefly to page 643, to the George Herbert poem, Easter Wings. What do you immediately notice about this poem? Pardon? Yeah, it's sideways. But when we turn it, turn the page to the proper way, what does it look like on the page? Or 2 hourglasses, right? It looks like 2 hourglasses. But what else is it meant to represent, or do you think it might be meant to represent? Yeah, they look like wings. Now, you're not wrong to say they look like hourglasses, because there is actually an hourglass-like action going on in the poem. Right, can I get a volunteer to read the first stanza? Yep, go for it.
Noah who creates man and wealth and stores, the Thou foolish me, he not the same, decaying more and more, till he became most poor.
Keep going.
With thee, let me rise, as not harmoniously. How you say that?
Harmoniously. Yep.
Say it again? No.
Harmoniously.
Harmoniously.
Mm-hmm.
And saying this day thy victories, then shall the fall further the fight in me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we get somebody to read the second stanza? All right, Matthew, go for it.
My tender age and sorrow did begin, and still with sickness and shame. Thou didst so punish sin, that I became most then. With thee let me combine, and feel this day thy victory. For if I am my wing on thine affliction shall advance the flight in me.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. So what do we see happening in each of these stanzas? What do we start with? Like at the beginning, Lord who createst man in wealth and store, right? What does wealth and store mean? What does it mean to have wealth and store?
You have plenty of it.
Yeah, you got lots of stuff, right? I have all I need. Though foolishly he lost the same, decaying more and more till he became most poor. What's going on?
Like, it's representing him losing wealth as the...
Exactly, yeah. The shape of the poem, again, reflects the action in the poem, right? The lines get shorter as he loses things. With thee, O let me rise as larks harmoniously, and sing this day thy victories, then shall the fall further the flight in me. So what's happening in the second half of the stanza? Pardon?
It gets bigger.
Yeah, it gets bigger again, right? As he's lost his physical wealth, but is gaining spiritual wealth, right? So with each line, again, it gets broader, it gets wider. Now, this is a particular kind of poem that George Herbert is famous for. It's usually called a pattern poem. And Herbert wrote a whole book largely full of these. There are two that I posted to George of you, The Collar and The Altar, that are sort of doing similar things, right? The poem itself is formed into the shape of the most powerful symbol, right? The most important symbol. So in this case, the wings, right, that will carry the speaker's spirit to heaven, right? That's the important bit here. Now, sometimes these poems don't necessarily focus on a single controlling metaphor, but rather on a sort of movement amongst metaphors. So let's look at the Andrew Marvell poem on page 505, to his coy mistress. Could I get a volunteer to start reading that? And I'll tell you when to stop. Grace, go for it.
Had we built but well enough in time, this coyness lay where none kind, we would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love stay. Thou by the Indians' gangside shouldn't rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you tender with blood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of Jews. My vegetable love should grow faster than empire and more slow, and tender years should go to praise thine eyes and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. And age at least to every part, and the last age should show you heart. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what kind of argument is he setting up here in this first verse paragraph? What What is he trying to explain here? What is he trying to tell his coy mistress? What does he want her to know? How is he setting this up?
That I love her.
Mm-hmm. And how does she deserve to be loved? How does he say she deserves to be loved?
Eternal.
Pardon?
Like eternal? Forever.
Yeah, okay, eternally. Had we but whirled enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime. Right, so coyness is shyness, right? So she's putting him off. What does had we but whirled enough in time mean? What's a synonym for had in this case?
Possess.
Pardon?
Possess.
Possessed. Why does he frame it this way? Like, had we whirled enough in time?
If we.
Exactly, yes. If we had whirled enough in time, this coyness lady were no crime, right? So if time were not an issue, if we had, the whole world span to travel ourselves throughout time, whatever, it wouldn't matter if you were wandering around in India and I was still here in England, sitting by the banks of the river, getting rained on, because that's what happens in England. He talks about vegetable love. How does a vegetable love?
Passively.
Passively, yes, as per the footnote. What don't plants do that humans and animals do? They don't move. In regards to the second part of the phrase, they don't have feelings, as far as we know. If they did, who could possibly eat a tomato without pangs of conscience? What else don't they do? Think back to the flea.
They don't move.
Yeah. They don't produce sexually, at least not in the way humans and animals do, right? So vegetable love is a passive and chaste love, right? So if we had all the time in the world and all the world to ourselves, right, I would happily pine chastely for you by the banks of the river, right? Right? You could go off and find rubies, right? Eternally glittering, unchanging jewels, right? A ruby doesn't decay. And 100 years should go to praise thine eyes and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. Right? So he would spend centuries simply praising her face and parts of her body, right? Just on praise. And that's when things get weird. Can I get somebody to start reading from line 21 here? But at my back, I always hear.
But at my back I always hear Sun's winged chariot hurrying near. And yonder all before us lie, deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song, then worms shall try, that long preserved virginity. And your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, I do their embrace.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what happens to all of his passive, chaste, vegetable love in this stanza, in this portion of the poem? What is he turning around and telling her?
He doesn't love her anymore.
Is he telling her that he doesn't love her?
And in the back of his mind, they're running out of time.
Yeah, time's a ticking away, right? We do not have world enough in time. Pardon?
Changes in everything.
Yeah. And if we look at, like for the metaphor that he starts this stanza with, right? At my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near. Right? What's a chariot? Is a chariot something you want at your back? No, a chariot, yeah, it's fast. It can run you over, and the guy in it probably has a spear, right? So yeah, a chariot is dangerous. A chariot is not something you want at your back, right? So we go from this sort of world where everything is slow and beautiful and unchanging, right? No, time is actually bearing down on us really, really hard. And right, if we don't do something about this, then what do we get? Right, yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Now, why a desert in this case? What does a desert have to do with the broader argument he's trying to make? What's a desert?
Very dry, empty place.
It's, I'm sorry?
Very dry, empty, very lonely.
Yep, dry, empty, lonely. Anything grow there?
Barely.
Barely anything, right? Yeah, a desert is a barren place. It's an infertile place. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity. This is probably the most disgusting metaphor in the poem. And it's also, what do you notice he's doing with the rhyme here? Try, virginity. Are we supposed to say this virginity? Sound like Eric Cartman, respect my authority? What kind of rhyme is this? Yeah, exactly. Good. This is an I rhyme. So something is going on in this couplet, right? Something weird, something untoward. Right now, what do we notice the form of the whole poem is in? What's the rhyme scheme for the whole poem? What kind of rhymes do we have? Yeah, they're all couplets, right? It's couplets throughout. And here, we have this little I rhyme, right? Why is it appropriate? Essentially, what is this line about? Why are the worms coming? Yep, it's sign of decay. They're assaulting her body. But this is also, right, the worms are coming after. The worms will try her virginity.
Therefore, like, rotted, or like something getting old and dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the point here, though, right, is that if she dies with her virginity intact, right, she loses it to the worms, not to him. So this happens because she was not coupling, right? So that's the point of the I rhyme, right? Yeah, it's disgusting. But that doesn't seem to be something that the poet's particularly worried about, right? In fact, this is the effect he's trying to have on her in this second stanza is what? What's he trying to do? Yeah, he's trying to get her to do what he
Get her
wants.
attention.
I think he's probably got her attention, right?
No, the music.
Well, in what tactic does he seem to be using to get her attention? How is he trying to make her feel? By referring to, like, look, time's winged chariot is bearing down on us, If you don't give your virginity to me, you'll lose it in the grave to worms.
Is he trying to make her feel guilty?
I don't know if guilt would be the appropriate emotion here, right? Make her like you're gonna get old, right?
Make her feel that it's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's trying to make her afraid, right?
Basically saying you're not getting any younger.
Yeah, but in the most threatening and disgusting possible ways, right? So in a way, he seems to be trying to shock or terrify her into acquiescing with what he wants, right? With a series of metaphors related to barrenness, infertility, death. And your quaint honor turned to dust, and into ashes all my lust. My favorite two lines in the poem: the grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. So then we move on to third stanza. Can I get somebody to read the third stanza? Now, starting with now therefore. Anyone at all?
Now therefore, while
Thank you.
with you, sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires. Now let us sport us while we may, and now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour, than languish in his slow chat power. Let us roll all our strength and all, our sweetness up into a ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus thou, we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run.
Okay, so what's the difference in tone here? Thank you. How does the imagery, the argument shift? So in the first stanza, we had him willing to, talking about how he would be willing, if time would stop, right, to just wait forever and worship her. And in the second stanza, he's throwing up all of these images of sort of the terror of barrenness and infertility at her, right? What's he doing in this stanza? What's the strategy here? How is this different? Do you notice anything weird about his language? Like any particular pattern in the kinds of words he uses here?
He's talking about like power.
Okay, what words suggest power to you, Grace?
Like birds of prey.
Birds of prey. I'm sorry, what was that?
Devour.
Devour.
Fires.
Fires. Anything else?
Strength.
Strength.
Iron gates.
Iron gates. Tear.
Rough strife.
Rough strife, yeah. What kind of evening does he seem to have in mind?
Very visible.
Yeah, very, very physical and kind of violent, right?
It seems kind of threatening in the last.
Yeah. This does not seem like a nice guy, right? He's maybe not such a nice boy. Yeah, there's a language of violence that runs through this whole third stanza. Now, is it violence solely on his part? Is he suggesting he's the only one who will or should behave like this? Now, yeah, there's an us in just about every line, right? Sorry, what?
It says our and us.
Yep, us, our. So he wants both of them to behave violently, right? Thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run. So why reference the sun standing still? What would that mean, essentially?
That kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So we can't do that. We can't make time stop. So we will make him run even faster. Right? By taking our pleasures while we are still young, we will actually shorten our own lifespans. This is again connected to a 17th century belief, hastened in the footnote, referred to in the footnote, that every time a person had sexual intercourse, they lost a day of their lives. Right? It was actually referred to as the little death. So what he is suggesting is shortening our lives would be worth it. Because letting ourselves have this great long expanse of nothing would simply be boring. Okay, so do you all have a better sense of how a metaphysical poem works? Okay, so it's the big thing to take away from this is that it's usually an argument, right? A persuasive piece that is based around some kind of central metaphor. Right? A metaphor that brings two things together that aren't necessarily obvious matches. And the reason I give you 3 stanzas in which to do this, right? Most of the poems we looked at for today, well, okay, half the poems we looked at for today work in that way, right? It develops the argument over 3 stanzas. Right? So it presents the argument, offers an opportunity for refutation, and then tries to close the deal, right? Okay, so if nobody has any questions about any of this, all right, I'm going to let you go a little bit early today, and we will talk a little bit more about weighing comparisons, and finding significant difference and unexpected similarity next time, right? Which is largely what metaphysical poetry is about.